Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. Justice Marie-Josée Hogue is struggling to get access to government documents. Like all Canadians, the woman who leads the public inquiry into foreign interference heard the Trudeau government promise access to secret documents, which is important as Hogue is looking into how China, Russia and other actors tried to meddle in the last two elections and how intelligence made its way to decision makers at the time. But instead, Justice Hogue has been getting documents with redacted information and in some cases no access at all. Take a listen now to how the Prime Minister defended his government's actions on Thursday.
We have actually shared more cabinet confidences than any previous government in history because it is so important that the various inquiries and justices are able to do their work, to demonstrate the work that is being done and what needs to continue to be done in countering foreign interference. We have done more than any previous government to counter foreign interference, and we will continue to work with all relevant agencies and bodies, not just to protect Canada and its democracy from foreign interference, but to demonstrate the transparency and openness that is necessary for people to be confident that Canada is doing everything to keep them and their institutions safe.
Well, to talk about this is our journalist panel. Stephanie Levitz is the Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, Joel-Denis Bellavance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse, and Kristy Kirkup, the Parliamentary Reporter for the Globe and Mail. Hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Good to see you, Michael.
Hello. So, you know, I referenced it a little bit off top, but, you know, in the fall, when the Hogue Commission was actually unveiled and announced, we heard Dominic LeBlanc, the Public Safety Minister, saying that secret documents would be shared with the Commission, even cabinet documents would be shared with the Commission. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening here. Stephanie, how does that hinder the work of the public inquiry, do you think?
Well, with the Prime Minister's answer there, you know, he talks about we did better than any other government. Yes, and to borrow another phrase from this particular government, better is also always possible. And to not just disclose the documents, but not explain why to Canadians. Explain to us what is in those documents. We've seen in this commission in particular that a lot of times things end up redacted, blacked out, withheld for reasons that can actually be challenged and are later found to be unnecessary. So he better have a darn good justification for Canadians as to why these have to be redacted, because otherwise it does in fact undercut, I think at the end of the day, the conclusions of the Commission, in particular as it relates to sort of the subtext under all of this, Michael, the subtext that the political level made a choice not to act because they saw it as a benefit to them. And unless Cabinet is fully transparent, that little line, that little thing that's eating at all of us cannot go away. Yeah,
not go away, in part because the opposition keeps suggesting that as well. So, you know, to address it directly, as you say, where's the information? Joel-Denis, what do you make of the impact of this?
Well, the impact, I think, will be I think we'll see what the impact is, how Mrs. Hogue will make her recommendations and her conclusions. But I think that I'm not surprised that the government is actually limiting access to the documents, because the Liberal government was foot-dragging itself into creating that very commission. That was not the first option. I don't think it was the second option, maybe the third option, but it was brought to and forced to set up that commission because of the controversy surrounding the report of the Special Rapporteur, David Johnston. But at the end of the day, when we see the final report of Justice Hogue, I think that she will have the final say, the final word on it, and she may not be very nice to the Liberal government on how much access she had in total, but I think she's seen enough to be able to draw some strong and formidable recommendations in her final report that is expected in December.
Yeah. Kristy, what do you make of it? Your paper's been looking at it quite closely this past week.
You know, I think that what we have here is really an expectation that was set by the public safety minister, who had come out and said that all of the documents were going to be released. And then in reality, again, we have the fact that there's now this push coming from the commission itself to say, please hand over the documents. And the optics of all of that are not good for this government, which, of course, is already facing a challenge with respect to how it is seen in the public, and especially on the issue of foreign interference. Again, the amount of political pressure that had to be applied on the government to do the thing that it's doing right now. And then again, you have this tension between the commission and the government in terms of the commission accessing documents that it is seeking. I think how how it looks on the outside is less than ideal for this government, and really just lends itself to criticism from the opposition.
Yeah, and of course, it's looking into, yes, foreign meddling into the last couple of elections, but also that key line, how secret information was shared or not shared with the government. And that's where a lot of the questions are lying. Why is there a gap in the information that Secret Services said they had provided the government and the action or lack thereof from the government itself? But, when we heard the Public Safety Minister, what was interesting to me at the time was he said there is a way to share every document so that Canadians don't have access to it equally as well, that you could share some publicly, share some only with the Commission. How is the calculus on this change, do you think, Stephanie? Or do you think it was a misstep from the get-go from Dominic LeBlanc?
It's a great question, right? Because again, we don't know what they're withholding, and we don't know why they are withholding it. And so whatever change in calculus they may have made, absent the explanation coming from them, either to the public or through Commissioner Hogue on this one, we are left with questions here. As again, the Commissioner has said, and it'll be interesting to see, she has signaled that she's willing to take some of this stuff all the way to court if she has to. Yeah. And I would like to see if that is where we end up. If we end up in another, I'll remind sort of your viewers about the Winnipeg lab situation where the opposition was clamoring for documents, the House of Commons, the government was stonewalling, it ended up in court, it was a historic moment in the House. Are we going to go there again? And then what does that say about the willingness of this government? Recall they were elected on a promise, it's in every ministerial directive, about transparency. So then what are you hiding? Because the inference can only be at the end of the day, they're hiding something because they've led us down that road.
Michael, the ultimate mandate of the Prime Minister is to protect, yes, Canadians, but also our democracy. And so this is a real test for the government to test its seriousness and its determination to protect our democracy. A second test will come because the Conservative Party has offered to pass quickly Bill C-70, the bill that would actually provide the government some tools to fight foreign interference, namely the creation of a foreign registry. So this is going to be another test. If the government is serious, I think it will take up the Conservative offer to pass quickly that bill so that it is in full force before the next federal election.
Yeah, and that's the key part, right? The Conservatives are offering to do this because we are looking at a potential election next October 2025. Kristy, what do you say to the calculus changing or a misstep from the Public Safety Minister from the get-go?
I remember when the Public Safety Minister made those comments, and I thought, you're really setting the bar. And of course, I think there is the push for as much information as possible, but it just seemed hard to believe that the government was going to hand over everything. And so I am frankly not surprised that there is this struggle over access to documents, but I do think that it only lends itself, as Steph and JD have said, to criticism of the government. And frankly, I don't think the Prime Minister, in terms of his response to the reporter question, you come out and say, well, we've handed over more documents than anyone else. Like that is not addressing the fundamental issue of, I get it, there are matters of national security, and you might not be able, of course, to speak to the contents of the documents. But I think perhaps he could have provided a better explanation as to what some of the thinking is around, the sensitivity of the documents and why the government is taking the position that it has in this case.
Yeah, well, to pick up on what you said, JD, ultimately this government has been dragging its feet on this issue, and it looks like that's what we're looking at again. So we'll keep following that story. But I do want to speak now and turn to the Speaker of the House of Commons and Conservative MP Rachel Thomas, because as people may remember, she was removed from the House of Commons last month for calling the Speaker a disgrace. She was asked to withdraw the comment. She did, but that was not reflected in the official recording of Hansard. And when pushed to explain, the Speaker's office said her response was not clear because of mic issues. Her privilege, rather, was not breached. And in the words of the Speaker, quote, after a decision of the chair, it is not up for debate. Stephanie, what impact will this have on the Speaker's future and really the controversy around him? Because the Conservatives, we just saw, for the third time, tried to remove him just this week.
This is, one of those examples where you wonder, did you have to do that? Did you have to? Was there not a moment in time with Rachel Thomas? I'm being serious here. You
okay, serious face.
No, my serious face will come on. What I mean is the beleaguered Mr. Fergus, Speaker Fergus, has a lot of tension. There's a lot of doubt being thrown on his credibility. This is a moment where people who were watching in the House clearly heard her say, "I withdraw." And so was this not one of those like gray area moments where you could be like, yeah, you know what, the mic wasn't clear, but the tape is to engender goodwill. That is my point, Michael. To build some goodwill, to build some credibility, to build a consensus position, or try at least to restore a consensus position that people can have faith in the determinations of Speaker Greg Fergus, that he is not partisan, which he is not supposed to be, that he is a fair adjudicator of the rules of the Commons. Perhaps parliamentary procedure is such that, oh yes, if the Speaker says X, it is final. But as we've seen time and time again, not always. There's room. And this might have been one of those times where an exception to the rule for the greater good may have been an appropriate move under the circumstances.
Yeah, and true, and because as we say, and as the Conservatives have said time and again, they do not have confidence in the Speaker already, and that is a very loud voice being expressed in the Commons time and again. JD, what do you make of it?
I totally agree with Stephanie that the Speaker, who has shined since he has been elected in that position, should have taken that moment and maybe really listen to the tape and try to make sure that her voice was actually being able to be heard on the mic. But I think he lost an occasion to try to bring back some goodwill in the House of Commons. This is another strikes against him, and it's still facing the Conservative Party, and so I expect that the Conservative Party, at the very first occasion that it comes around, will try again to oust him from his position. So he is, how can I say that, dead man walking on his position, that he should expect more fury, more attacks from the Conservative. And the Bloc Québécois is also of the same view. They don't have confidence in the Speaker because of what he did, the lack of judgment and making too many appearances that he's not neutral as he should be. Because of his position. Yeah,
and that again underlines the point, the fact that Mr. Fergus has been able to survive because the Liberals have supported him, the NDP have supported him, but sizably, considerably, neither the Conservatives or the Bloc Québécois.
And it just shows that the House is very much divided, and it's still divided on his position. So that House of Commons has been, the most divisive House of Commons I've seen in 30 years of covering politics.
Kristy?
Yeah, I think that just as we look to the future of what will happen to Greg Fergus as Speaker of the House of Commons, I can't remember the last time that I've actually written this number of times about the Speaker, allegation, of impartiality about the Speaker. The Speaker is supposed to be the referee in the House of Commons, and yet there are questions about, whether he's actually this impartial voice or listener in the House of Commons and being there to command the House of Commons and ensure that it functions properly. And so I think that to Joel-Denis' point, this is just going to keep going. And I think that the case with Rachel Thomas just underscores a moment of questionable judgment for Mr. Fergus, or it contributes to allegations of questionable judgment for him, why he decided to weigh in the way that he did and how that situation was handled. It is a very heightened climate, to JD's point, in the House. And, since he took on that role in October, it's just been a series of, stories and questions about whether he can actually be that impartial individual in the House. So I think that's regrettable, frankly. And, with the Bloc and the Conservatives being in agreement on this, I envision that we're all going to be writing about the Speaker, and allegations that he's facing down the road.
Yeah, well, and of course the big question that still is being asked: can he really carry on in that role if so many members of the House do not have confidence in him? So we'll keep watching that. But that is the time. Always appreciate it. Stephanie, Joel-Denis, and Kristy, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Michael.
Thank you, Michael.